The UK government has been experimenting, at least with geoengineering, for a very long time over our skies. In northwest Leicestershire, we've got East Midlands Airport, and I have got to, some years ago, to people who worked in a company called RVL, who have 3 spray-equipped short Boeings based at the airport. And these people left that company because they were spraying us with chemicals and they thought it was morally repugnant. They couldn't work in a company that was doing that. They've been doing it since at least 2019. They fly out of the airport on military IDs, so you can't track them on the tracker, the airport tracker, and they're using ex-military pilots who've signed the Official Secrets Act, and they go out and spray us. I don't know. I think probably they're telling the pilots that they're saving the world and being paid an awful lot of money by dimming the sun. I think that's bad enough. I don't think any government has the right to do that without consulting the people and certainly consulting Parliament. For a bountiful life on this planet, we need 2 things. We need sunlight to make the plants grow, and we need carbon dioxide. Both of those being under attack shouldn't come as any surprise. It's terrible, and you know they sell you the idea that these lines in the sky and the spreading out and the clouds, it's all perfectly normal. But I mean, I think they've actually haven't NASA had to instigate a whole new different, you know, having been for hundreds of years, we had so many types of cloud, and now we've had to have almost twice as many types of cloud. I mean, where has all this come from? I think we know where it's come from, don't we? That is the cover story. They are maintained on a retainer by the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency for that very purpose. But you might have noticed we don't have an awful lot of oil slicks that need dispersing off the UK coast. People who've got the samples tell me they have sampled them, and it's boron, strontium, aluminium oxide, and sometimes 2% uranium. Yes, it is. But all those heavy metals are tremendously bad for the human body, and of course the aluminium, which people are detecting in the soil. And bear in mind that aluminium can never be found as free aluminium. It has to be smelted by human resources. So I think it's bauxite is the ore that would be found naturally. So any aluminium that's free as aluminium in the environment has been created by man. It's in the soil, but obviously it builds up in the human brain. It's heavily linked to dementia and Alzheimer's. Yes, and I'm afraid in the plan for depopulation and control, you see half the world are difficult to control because they don't have the internet, but that's the poor half of the world. And you may have noticed that farmers around the developed world have been under attack. UK farmers, European farmers, North American farmers, they're all under attack, and one of the ways they're being attacked is by increased energy prices, which means that fertiliser is unaffordable to maintain crop yields. Farmers are under attack because if you read Klaus Schwab's book from, I think it was 2011, predicting that human population will drop to below 1 billion by 2050, the 3 reasons he gave was repeated pandemics, wars and famine. The famine's being engineered by an attack on farming and agriculture worldwide, and that's particularly going to be acute in that poor half of the world that can't be controlled with no internet because they don't have much money, and when the worldwide famine comes, they will not be able to afford food, and they're going to be most acutely affected by that shortage, which is going to cause the death by starvation of a lot of their young and old, and the a lot of the other people are going to start migrating further to what they believe is the developed world, the land of so-called milk and honey. It's not only about cloud seeding and geoengineering, it's through the HARP system. And obviously if you put heavy metals into the atmosphere, if you then want to use microwaves to heat it up, it's much more responsive, and that's how they do it. And when they've got a storm situation, if they release the heavy metals and spray them into it, then it makes the storm much more controllable. And they've been practicing, for many decades. So it's probably 60, 70 years they've been practicing weather modification, which actually started at the end of the Second World War. Through the HARP system, you do have the ability to instigate earthquakes, because the HARP system, if you were to release some heavy metals into the stratosphere, enhance it with HARP, so it warms up, you can push out the ionosphere as like a little bubble on the outside of the planet, and then when it bounces back, apparently it puts a lot of pressure then on the ground and can result in earthquakes. I've noticed that certainly as someone who's involved in agriculture and food processing, fresh food processing for a couple of decades, the weather was really important, and you used to be pretty confident that 2 and 3 day forecasts were invariably very accurate, and a lot of that appears to have gone at the moment. Obviously, if you're noticing that as weather forecasters, something's changed, hasn't it? What we know is the manipulations, I think, gone into overdrive. And when we had a summer a couple of years ago, we hardly saw the sun. We hardly saw the sun. I did have a few hours with Dane Wigington of Geoengineering Watch, who's probably the most experienced and researcher in this area. I know that he's been advising Robert Kennedy Jr. in the States on this, and we're seeing some action, and some people are talking about it. But it's very much like what we're hearing in America about the COVID jabs and geoengineering. It's almost as if we're speaking a different language in the UK, because our media is much more locked down on reporting on these, what we would still regard as conspiracy theories. Whatever you say about the vaccines, which I believe have killed and maimed millions and millions of people around the world and in the UK, they can always have a defence. They can always say, well, we thought there was a pandemic. We thought the vaccines were safe and effective. When you catch someone spraying chemicals on you from 20,000 feet, there's not a lot of defence, is there? And they were getting windy because too many people knew what was going on. Well, now the government have given them the defence, haven't they? We're experimenting with geoengineering. So whatever they can say is, oh, it's just an experiment. There are two companies involved, and it's all done by the military, by the way. It's all via military, just like everything to do with the vaccines and the pandemic was via the military. The geoengineering, the cloud seeding, and there are two companies involved in the UK. One's RVL, flying out of East Midlands, and there's one that's got a lot more different size planes, and they're all over the UK, and that's 2XL, and that's run by former Red Arrows pilots, and very closely linked to the military, and doing a lot of different spraying activities. And on top of that, I don't know whether you've got American or NATO tankers dealing with different things. I do know that there is a HARP set up on a ship now, and it's amazing that when there's a natural disaster, it seems that HARP enabled ship with all the antennas on it happened to be, just off the coast of Spain when Spain had all those floods that caused loss of life. Well, it's insanity, isn't it? If you look at it logically, if you believe the government's argument, which I think I would not advise you to do, it's as spurious as we're bringing in digital ID to stop illegal migrants coming to the country. So they will say, we're going to do some experiments on sun dimming because we need to stop the sun getting through and we need to cool the planet. Well, I calculated on the back of a fag packet that the UK surface area, and bear in mind, to do geoengineering over somebody else's country would be an act of war, right? So we can only do it over our airspace. And I think that the UK airspace is probably less than 1/2 of 1% of the globe. So if we completely cut our sun out for a year, we'd have no real significant effect on the world, but it'd have a considerable effect on life in this country, wouldn't it? So why would we want to do it? Unless everyone else was doing it around the world, it wouldn't make any difference, would it? Does that tell us that everyone is doing it? But I mean, if we don't have any sunlight, we won't have any crops. We're not going to have any vitamin D. It's going to destroy health and mental well-being amongst the population. Everyone knows how much better everyone feels when the sun's shining. That is not a placebo. It has a palpable effects on humanity. And taking away the sun is detrimental. And what I'll end this interview with is a bit of information that I put a written question in Parliament, which you were allowed to put oral questions, but I wrote a written question to the government, and it was the last question that was answered, or nearly, before Rishi Sunak called the general election in May 2024. And my question as tabled was, is the UK government carrying out any geoengineering, cloud seeding or weather manipulation affecting UK airspace? And the second part of the question was, or is it aware of anybody else doing so? Now, they can't lie to you. When it came back, I didn't have time because he called a general election to put another question in. They said no to the first question and they crossed the second question out, which meant they didn't want to answer because the answer was yes.